Hello and welcome to In the Art Scene podcast, a place where creatives share their stories. My name is Galina Marquez, and I have another cool story prepared for you today, so let's get to it. Hello everybody and welcome back to In the Art Scene podcast. I have another special guest. As you guessed, of course, I have another special guest today. Her name is Daiga Atvara. She is currently in San Diego, but she was born and raised in Latvia and got her master's in arts in Latvia. And she is an amazingly accomplished businesswoman, a designer, a creative director, and now an artist and making some very interesting work. And I hope we're going to talk about everything, a little bit of everything, starting with your story and what are you doing now. I know you are a head of faculty at the New School of Design here in San Diego. So that is very interesting. So take it away.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Actually, the New School of Architecture, I used to teach there for a while. And right now, currently, I'm not. So I used to teach brand design and visual design up there, some few classes, and I love teaching. And I used to teach a little bit in my alma mater up at the Academy of Arts in Riga. So teaching is wonderful. There's this saying, if you want to learn something, teach it. It's very true. It sounds, fancy, but it's very, very true, because then you really need to think about something deeply, right? Not just intuitively, but you really need to go in. I'm like, wait a second, does this make sense? Or how would you argue against myself? So anyway, I love that teaching, kind of teaches you more than we think. I don't know. I don't know where to start.
Well, let's start from the very beginning.
So how I was bored, right? So at the beginning, yeah. So I was born and then raised in Riga in Latvia, right? Which is, another gigantic subject just alone. What does it mean to be born somewhere else? What does it mean to be an immigrant somewhere? But anyway, so my life turned, and again, it's a long story, so I'm just going to shorten it, right? I ended up studying up in a Humboldt State University in California. I studied sculpture and photography there. And it was wonderful. And then again, it's like events in the middle. And then I ended up staying here because mostly because of my business that I started with a few business partners. And then it turned into bigger and bigger company. And then at the end, it was really big. And now when I'm looking back, I'm like, oh my God, did it even happen? Right. So it's one of those things that life just takes you somewhere, without you really knowing it or understanding it, what's happening. Right. And then, and again, it was just whole internet thing and digital design, and it just came so fast. It's like on a wave, right? So I honestly cannot say that I got a lot of pleasure or a lot of knowledge or a lot of something out of my business kind of years, because it wasn't really my choice. It was just kind of happened to me, Well,
and let's talk about that. Let's just roll a little bit back. It's 1998, from what I understand. Is that right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the design firm.
Yeah, it was design and technology firm. And it was right when the internet happened, right? Right when it started, when I remember, I didn't even know what internet means. Nobody of us really knew. But it was like heavily led by engineers and kind of nerdy people, right? Which they had no idea what design is. My background when I was going through school back in Latvia, I was in publishing. So I worked in a lot of newspapers and magazines. And it's funny, like, no, I'm looking back, I'm like, wait a second, internet is just content, right? But back then, that would be, people wouldn't understand what I'm talking about, right? But that's what it was. And because of my background in design and all, I kind of intuitively, I guess, knew what to do with it, right? That it's about how do you communicate with people and how do you, all that stuff, right? But I mean, no, I'm looking back at it, I'm realizing at the beginning, it was just crazy. It was really, really crazy, but not necessarily in really good way. It was really fast.
What do you mean?
What I mean is like, it was kind of shallow, it was exciting as of like, it's like this run, right? It's like you grew bigger and you had all these clients and all that money and all that, right? But because it happened so fast, I don't find it to be very deep, right? There's no depth to it. If it's very kind of superficial almost, like you got to know all these people, your clients, your this or that, or the companies you worked with, right? There was no time. It was too quick. I think it's just in general. I think maybe our kids will learn how to live in this fast world, what to do with it and how to kind of manage it. I think for that time, from like early, like when the internet started, it was just the speed was mind blowing. It was exciting too. But what I'm saying is, for me as a human being, right? I can't tell you that I've went to some spiritual journey doing that. It's complete opposite, right? I feel like I need to kind of heal from that almost in a way.
That is an interesting statement.
Yeah.
So does the firm still exist?
Well, they all morph into one to another. I mean, it was one of the largest agencies in the state at the end, right? And then, or in the world, actually, at some point, right? And then, the whole advertising agency exploded, and it all just changed, right?
What was the name of it?
Well, it started to be called Digitaria, and then we got acquired by J. Walter Thompson, who was the oldest advertising agency in the world, and they don't exist today anymore. Because they all, again, they morphed and collided and collapsed and got everybody acquired each other at the end. And so it's interesting. So that world where I live doesn't exist today anymore.
So the way you're talking about it, I'm recalling some episodes from The Madman, although that was happening in the 50s in the advertising world. And it sounds like you were living almost the same kind of a dynamic, but with online advertisement.
Yeah. No, it's very similar. I think it's any kind of like these industries where you are an agency, right? And when you are selling some kind of ideas, right? Or stories to people, it becomes, I think it requires certain type of people who enjoy that. I can't say that I didn't, right? But right now, if I look at like what I'm doing in art, right, which requires you to slow down and kind of like reflect on different things, is that there's no depth to it. It's just all pretend, and it's all, the word storytelling to me is, I cannot stand it, because it was all based on that, right? Not stand it sounds like too sharp, but it's almost like, oh well, what people need is stories, and it's like the brand stories, and advertising is a story. So everything is about, how can I tell you something, right? That you would get it. Second of all, I could manipulate you into something, right? And then that it would becomes memorable. So there's all these memorable stories that could change your mind or mindset or perception, right? And it's a game, right? And it's kind of fun to play, but at some point I'm like, I'm utterly tired of it. I'm not even tired. I'm utterly on board of stories. I really am. And it's like almost when I look at the art, which is very kind of like politically charged or has like some agenda of changing people's minds or whatever, I immediately have kind of like, whoa, like it's, it's there. I have difficulty with that. It's like a PTSD I have.
Because it feels more like propaganda kind of posters, or
well, propaganda is just meaning like it's a manipulation, right? It's almost like very conscious manipulation. It's not like, oh, I just accidentally manipulated you into liking, like, I don't know, this red object, it's different, right? But if you consciously know that you want to change people's minds for whatever, good or bad, and then we could talk about it forever, what does it mean? I have almost like, I just want to stop right there and be like, wait a second, what's going on? Let me analyze that. Let me slow down and really understand what that means, Yeah, well, the story to me is after something happens. You could tell story after some sort of experience, right?
Yeah.
So then what was that experience? So I'm interested in the experience or the causation of the experience versus like, oh, well, how am I going to tell the story about that now, right? It becomes interesting.
All right. So you're not involved in that anymore, as I understand. No. So you are now dedicating your time to teaching and doing your own art, or are you doing something else?
So I teach, when I have time or opportunity, right? And then I do design projects. I do quite a bit of them, but I do it only if I feel that it is, and it sounds privileged, and I don't mean to sound like that. It's not that it's, does it interest me or not? If I find it like harmless, right? If I feel like that whatever I'm helping to design or to advertise or whatever, right? If it feels right, if it sits right with me, right? Then I'd be like, you know what? I want to participate in that, It's very naive, I know, but
well, from the years of your experience, I think you have like a full right to say that. Whatever, it's naive, but I can make this choice now.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about your art then. I know that you were doing something interesting. You were playing with inks. There are some interesting blobs of color on your Instagram. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of context, though. I did not get much context.
Because I don't like stories, right? I don't want to. No, really, it's like I don't even think about it that way, but I think it is because of that. So I studied fine art, right? So I always loved drawing, just all kinds of things like oil and just any kind of expression. I love sculpture too. I love 3D things and three-dimensional meaning, right? Something that more, playing with the space. So how I ended up making my own pigments and inks, I can probably many things, right? But I just love the process of that. I love that, again, slowing yourself down and utterly understanding, not understanding, it's like paying attention, right? It is paying attention utterly of like, how can you make a pigment, which is just a form of energy, right? So, and I don't even want to dissect it even anymore. I don't want to, again, create another story of like, how wonderful it is to create inks. And I could tell you like a whole bunch of bullshit about that, of like how it brings me closer to Earth, or no, it's just great. There's something about wordless that I like about it, right? So I create my own inks, and then I create it out of all kinds of things, of metals, like copper is my favorite, and rust. Copper and rust I absolutely adore them. And I figured out how to do it with vinegar and salt and this and that and seawater. And so there's this whole alchemy going on. I'm not a chemist. I have no idea what I'm doing. I hope I'm not going to like put my house on fire or die of some impact, right? But I'll take that. But anyhow, so then I make it out of plants, of trees, of just things around me. And then I kind of like become a medium, and then I paint. But by medium, I mean like I just let things unfold. And maybe because of my, years and years of, design discipline and whatnot, it's kind of hard for me to make something that looks terribly ugly, right? So maybe just there's kind of like, I just like, oh, well, I'm going to put cold color with the warm color and something interesting will happen. So I just like automatically I do things like that. But anyways, that's my ink world. And then I paint asteroids.
Can I stop you before we go any further to the asteroids? You dropped the word energy, and you said that creating pigments and inks for you, it's like energy. What do you mean?
What I mean is the color is the form of energy, pigment, right? Anything around us is just basically just energy, right? To some point.
Can you elaborate? I'm just interested in your thoughts, because I've never thought about it like this.
Yeah. Well, it's like almost not to get like too much into some quantum physics or something, right? But that's what it is, right? Our whole cosmos, all universe is based off that, right? And then color is just one expression of some sort of energy field. And I find it so interesting, right? It's all around us, the color itself, right? I just sort of thinking about like, well, why is red and why is blue? And then why do we tend to like this and that? It's just so interesting, right? And it's almost like, and again, what I like about it, there's not that many stories about it. I mean, yeah, there's like cultural stories of like white means this and black means sorrow and whatever, right? But I'm going beyond that. I'm thinking, why do we instinctively like certain things? Or why would suddenly copper turn from this orange into this blue? Not why necessarily, but it's just so beautiful. And then how the energy changes, right? So it's again, it's this worldless world that I like. It's the energy world, so I don't mean about like spiritual energies. I'm talking like a purest form of just simple energy, right? That's what I mean.
I understand. That's interesting. So I, for the longest time, I had a theory about color, that color is basically has three, like the color that we see everywhere has three components: light, the surface that reflects the light, and then the receptor, which is the eye. Because all of us, if you think about it, like the animals perceive color differently, even like newborn babies perceive color differently, right? So without one of the components, color is not happening. So to me, it was that kind of alchemy, if you will.
It's a holy trinity.
Yeah.
You could make stories now, yay!
Oh, sorry, you're on a podcast.
Oh, no. That's true. No, it's true. That's kind of like how I see the color, right? And that's why it fascinates me. And or even making my own, it's almost I'm playing a little mini god, let me make something of my own, because it never existed before. It's just another way of somehow participating in this strange life, and it's not obsessively I need to make my own, otherwise I can't claim it. No, it's just play.
Mm-hmm.
I think. I don't think it goes any much deeper than that.
And you are using your inks to paint the asteroids.
No,
it's something different.
It's different. It's very different, but then it's not different. So the inks, just more about, like, again, it's just this alchemy thing, right? It's like, how do you, one color turns into that, and then use like soda ash and acids and all kinds of things, and they create crystals on it. So it's more of just like the marvel of, like, what it is? It's like I don't have no control over that, or very little control, right? Like, I know, if I'll do this to this, something will happen, right? Or if I put copper in vinegar, it will turn blue in a few months, right? But what will happen if I'll put the copper together with, let's say, rust and with the oak, right? I really don't know what will happen. And that's the beauty of it, in a way, right? It's just like, it's giving like a controlled space where things could happen. I like that. And again, maybe because it is my kind of previous things, that everything was life, right? Everything was so controlled and so predictable and so data driven. And so that's what I wanted, something complete opposite, right? Of that you're just almost witnessing things, So
you're basically like you're an engine for something to happen, but then it happens on its own.
Yeah, I'm
like
a medium.
Just
kind of like, not that innocent though, because I made things happen, but I'm like a little like, I'm just doing shenanigans. I'm just kind of like, let's see what happens, right? I mean, there are, and I could talk about it, but I don't actually want to talk about it. I did like all these, I call them planets in love, right? I don't know why planets, they just look like that. And then when they're colliding, like what happens, right? And they're different colors, and then how they interact with each other. But again, to me, they're just like just witnessing something beautiful happening. That's it. And I kind of like the lightness of it, right? Because, and maybe just me, and kind of like our times, that they're just so heavy, they're so heavy. There's so much just heavy things, thoughts to think about, and wars and pandemics and this and that and climate change, and everything is just bad, right?
Yeah, so we definitely live in a very interesting time.
Right? Right. Yeah, so I'm kind of like, oh my God, I just want something that doesn't have that. It's almost like brings us back into memories of just some kind of innocence, when you don't have to be so aware and take parts and sides and all that, that you could just, witness something else.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's kind of the feeling. So the asteroids, but I paint them in oil because I love oil. I like everything about it. Obviously, I don't make my own oil. That would be a little too crazy. But I always, not always. I shouldn't say that. What does it mean always? I'm fascinated by asteroids or objects in space, just in general, something that's really, really far away from us. Or in other words, something that we hardly know that they exist. Like, I don't know if they really exist. I believe NASA or whoever, right, takes pictures that they exist. Have I seen them? No. But the fact that there are these, I mean, they're as old as universe itself, They're stardust, the original one, right? That's all what they do. There's two kinds. I'm talking about the ones from the start, the ashy ones, right, which fascinate me. And they just float there. And then, and they have no gravity almost, right? Which means that there's no time on them, which again, to me, is just, I just like thinking about that. Like, the gravity is tied with time. So if their object has no gravity, that they basically, they're forever,
Okay. You got to educate me here, because again, I never connected gravity with time. I mean, it kind of makes sense because, on the planet with gravity, and we're, circling, and this allows us to count the days and et cetera, et cetera. Is that?
No, it's not gravity. Gravity is just the mass, right, of something, the object. Yeah. The bigger the gravity, the time goes faster, right? The less, then it goes slower, right? So theoretically, if you would live on top of the hill, you would age less than if you live in a valley. Actually, not theoretically. If you put like clocks, if you take it with you, right, and they move at different speeds, So the gravity impacts time of how fast time goes. Remember the movie Interstellar?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was like this whole thing about when they moved to other planets. When the one, I don't know, 2 years were like I can't remember, something like minute or something like that, right? And then if the more they would spend on a planet, the faster the time would go on a planet Earth. Not faster, but in comparison to that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so going back to my asteroids is because there's almost zero gravity, because there's so little, and they don't have any other objects that it would impact that, right? So the time stays kind of still there. So meaning there's no time, or very, very little time, which to me is just like, I don't know what it means. Again, I make no stories about that. It just fascinates me. I don't even know if it makes me feel good or bad. It kind of puts in perspective, right? Kind of like how we perceive time here. I'm like, oh, I'm going to talk to you at 11, like, and then we're going to talk, like, and meanwhile, bazillion miles somewhere, there's this object that floats with nothing, right? It's so detached and so alien to us. And then all these structures, right, on them, they're so fragile, again, because there's no gravity, right? That they're like cigarette ash. So if you would touch them, they would just crumble down. Not that you could, but they're incredibly fragile. Anyway, so I like to, it's just a complete pure meditation. I like, so I have the books and I collect photos of them when I can, of the asteroids, right? And then I paint their portraits. So like I take, like not a copy necessarily, make them bigger or something, right? It's just kind of meditation of thinking about them.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. Beginning of the time kind of evidence that it started at some point.
It is really fascinating. So I have a question for you. If you got in your possession a piece of asteroid or a meteorite, would you have made a pigment with it?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know if I could, though. Depends on what it is. But no, it's like I'm like kidding. I mean, there's my kids, like, oh, I'm just gonna make everything could be made, into ink, which is not true. I mean, it is true, but it's not true. But it's not that I'm obsessively want to make pigments out of everything. I don't know. It depends how beautiful that thing would be. It would be so beautiful that I don't want to touch it, and I probably wouldn't.
I actually saw. I held a piece of meteorite. If you remember, a few years ago.
Heavy, right?
No, I got a little tiny. It just looks like a black rock. Nothing else. Yeah, if you remember, when was it? 2013, 14, the huge meteorite in Chelyabinsk in Russia. Yeah. So I lived there at the time, and I had colleagues who would travel to that area, and pretty much everywhere who lived in that area, there was a huge field hunt. People just went there and picked up the meteorites. So I asked a colleague of mine to bring me one, and I then gave it to my nephew because he was obsessed with these stars and meteorites and the whole thing. But it's just, it's very unassuming, tiny little rock. I mean, you get, it's interesting though. It was interesting because you look at it and you compare it with the objects that which is little rocks that you can see anywhere. But then you're thinking this is probably the substance that does not exist on Earth on its own. Like if you I don't know, try to what's the word?
Take it apart.
You take it apart chemically. Research it. It's probably going to be a very different element than anything that exists here on Earth. Yet it really looks very unassuming, kind of boring even. So
and it has memories of living with no time. Which to me, Anyways, I just think it's a beautiful thing to meditate. But that not meditate in this kind of whatever trendy yogi style of days, but it's really just let your thoughts go about it, kind of let float in that a little bit.
That's very interesting. Let's take a short coffee break. Producing this podcast sure takes a lot of energy. Would you buy me a coffee so I can continue doing it? I would really appreciate it. The link is in the show notes and on our website, intheartscene.com. Thanks for supporting our show. Hey listeners, did I tell you that we have fun merch? Well, we do. Click shop on our website and check it out. We have tees and hoodies, coffee mugs for your paint water, and my personal favorite, a studio apron. We use fun quotes from real artists, our podcast guests. And the best thing is all items are customizable, so get creative. By purchasing the merch, not only do you support the production of this podcast, but you also help us support art-related nonprofits and community organizations. Thank you for your support. It sounds right now that you are just doing your art for the sake of the art because you want a very different experience from you had in your past life. You want something very deep, very meaningful, very meditative, and that kind of something that feeds your mind and fascinates you. And it's just for you. Is that right assumption, or is that not? Because I know that you've had a show.
Yeah, I don't know. I really haven't thought about it that way. If I'm doing it for this or for that, I think that art kind of like either you do it or you don't. I think it just kind of like I think you do it when you can't like not do it. I don't know how to explain. Again, it sounds probably cheesy and whatnot, but it's like you just have to do it.
I don't worry about sounding cheesy because pretty much everyone who's listening to this podcast feels the same way.
Yeah, so it's not like, oh, I'm sitting here and like, oh, what could I do with my life? Oh, let's make art. It doesn't work that way. Plus, on top of it, it's not like, oh, and then I have so much pleasure doing it. Actually, no, it's really hard because you hate yourself for a while, and then you think like it's so stupid. What am I doing? So there's all kinds of these questions, that arise, and then from one hand, you want people to like it, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever you created. And it's important. That's why we make, exhibitions and people come, and then you're like so happy that your friends like it. Yet at the same time, even if everybody would hate what I'm doing, I still would do it, right? So I don't know if I'm doing it because of I don't even know if I want to know. I'm just doing it. I don't know if that's my trauma, it's my therapy or what, but I don't know, it is what it is. I think also that there's so much going on, and like kind of like the art is becoming like this everyday thing, like, oh, now you also do art and whatever, it's almost like other form of like passing time, well, I cook, I have cats, well, I do art and I do this, and it's like, it's kind of lost it's what it really means, just another form of activity or another form of entertainment, that you entertain yourself and then you entertain others. And again, it goes back to this kind of like never-ending storytelling. It's art is a funny thing, right? I don't know. I don't think it's easy at all, and I don't think it should be easy. It's almost like a work, and you have to find time for it, and you have to be disciplined about that. And it takes time. It would be good to be an asteroid where the time is slow.
Right. Yeah, it is. It is work, and yes, it's a dedication in a way. And with what you're doing, like it doesn't sound to me like it's just a time passing, because you're like the process of creating pigments out of different things. It sounds really elaborate. So it does take a lot of work.
It takes like to make a beautiful copper, this turquoisey thing, right? It takes like a good 2-3 months, depends, right? So you have to wait. So there's like all these things about you just have to wait, you wait. And then on top of it, let's say to make something, I make 90% of what I make is just not good, and I throw it away. It doesn't work out. It doesn't. That's why oil is way more forgiving, right? It's completely a different medium. And that's maybe why I like to do both, because they're complete opposites. You could just paint over until you're satisfied, right? With inks, it's not like that at all. So it's just like a different ways, forms of being, really.
So what have you made inks of so far? Like I've heard copper, I've heard oak.
So metals, right? So I do like nails. Old nails would make beautiful rust and all kinds of just metal scraps, right? And then copper, like, is one of my absolute favorites, right? Make this beautiful turquoise, and then I make it out of all kinds of woods, like oak, pine, from their bark, right? And they make spectrum of mostly like in browns and oranges, right? And then from oak galls, you make the oldest thing ever, which is the black, right? All but it is a powder of that with any kind of metal. The moment they touch each other, they become black. Otherwise, oak gall on its own would be like light brown, and metal like rust would be just brown. And it's just so beautiful when they collide, and it's just this super beautiful black. So yeah, so and then I'm botanical, so it could be like from let's say carrot tops, or from beets I would make the red, or things like that. And then what you learn over time is that some of them will fade, like beads, right? They'll be beautiful red, and then in a month or two they'll be like, it's not anymore brown anyway. So, which is also lovely. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing with my inks, is just I keep just living in it is, I keep living in that world, in their world, in the color world, right? And then I resurrect back and I show people like, oh, that's how the world looks like, and that's how they mingle, and that's what they do on their own. I'm just here to tell you, it's like a shapeshifter. I just go into another dimension and I return with like whatever I harvested.
I get it. I totally get it. And by listening to you, it sounds like, yeah, it's just your new way of existing. But here's the question. What made you do an exhibition? Were you asked? Were you planning for it? What was that like?
It's kind of like a little bit of kind of everything is chance, like that's what it is. It's like kind of like you meet people. Actually, you meet all of them all the time. It's just like when you're at the right time, things happen, right? And then so I had tons of work, but I had really like no I don't know, like desires even, or something for the exhibition. And then I had, I guess, enough of them, or enough, again, like the things just kind of happened, and then the exhibition happened, and it's like, and I agreed to it, and then I was completely petrified, right? Because one thing is to have few things, another thing is like you go to space, and it was a pretty big space, and you're like, oh damn, no, I have to do it for real, I can't just post pretty pictures on Instagram. And then no, that was great. And I think it's that's the whole thing, is like, I think that whole culture of, or not, I guess, yeah, it is culture of like showing your work in galleries. It's fascinating, and I think it's something that's becoming kind of like forgotten a lot, especially in this silly town of San Diego, right? It's like people don't go to galleries as much as like they would go into some other towns, or especially in Europe, right? It's not the habit. It's not the thing. It's like, it's almost like if somebody drags you, then you'll go. But it's not just kind of like, well, you just have to. It's part of my life, right? That I want to go see what other people bring from those other dimensions, what they have seen. It's almost entering the spirit world, right? So, and there's really very little of that tradition,
So what was that experience like for you with your exhibition?
I don't know. It's like almost like an out of body experience, right? Because you have all the work and you have kind of like, you put it in a completely different space and it becomes something different, right? What I like about, again, the galleries, or showing it in a real physical space versus like, let's say in a social media, which is another conversation, right? Is that it becomes, you completely detach yourself from it. You let it go, it becomes living its own life. And I'm happy when people take it, when they take it with them, right? It's like they're not mine anymore. It's almost like that's my time to say like goodbye to my work, right? Because they're done. It's like I deem them to be done, meaning they could go now. I don't. It's not that they don't want them anymore. It's different, So so in that sense, it's almost liberating to me, the show, right? Because you could let go. You could be like, okay, I'm done with that. I could do something else. It's like an ending,
full circle,
or circle or something, right? And it's obviously wonderful to see, your friends and people just coming in and enjoying it. It's a wonderful feeling.
So I have another question, and I'm sorry if I'm pushing you to different, like, hard questions here, because I unfortunately I have missed that exhibition, but I would imagine that for people to see your work, they would need some context, and this was one of the questions at the very beginning when I went to your Instagram account. There are pretty pictures, but there's no context, so I have no idea that you are making those inks, you are making them collide, you are watching what's happening.
I know. I haven't made that into a business yet. I know.
So but at the exhibition, and you mentioned that you hate telling stories now because you've done it too much in the past. So, but for the exhibition, you probably would have to provide people with this context, or you just let people experience whatever there is with their eyes, and make their own assumptions?
No, it's not. I'm not that advanced yet, right? Or not advanced, but not that extreme. No, it's not that. It's like and again, being an artist, right? And I know so many of my friends, who are artists. And I mean, it is a business, right? And it's not business in like necessarily like very super trivial way, right? But you have to treat it as such, right? Otherwise, like, what you're doing. I mean, yeah, you could be like one go and run around, and do your thing. But these days, you have to advertise yourself and you have to put all these things together. And it's like, I'm not there yet. I can't do it yet. I keep doing what I'm doing, right? And I have other things, and then I'm fortunate enough to know people, right, who might want to exhibit my work. But I don't want to go. I'm just mentally, I can't do it. I can't start like again manipulate with you, like putting, let's say, on my Instagram, like all these things that my work becomes desirable, right, or interesting, or somebody would share, and I would have. I can't do it yet. I might one day. Maybe I'll wise up. I will do it, or maybe somebody else will do it for me. I don't know, but I have I can't right now. I can't do it. That would be, it would go so against to what I'm trying to do. It would be a clash, because again, there's this lightness to what I'm doing, but I'm feeling when I'm doing it, right? This kind of like accidental thing, and then I will make it like not accidental anymore. It's I don't know.
It kind of makes sense, but it kind of doesn't.
No, I don't know. It might not make sense at all. Yeah, I know. And I know. It's like, it's almost like, well, you have to guess. No, first of all, I mean, I wrote, like, when I had my exhibit, right, I had like a little like artist statement and all that. And it's not that I can't talk about my work at all, right? Or the stories behind it. No, I guess I wish there would be a different way to do it. I wish there was like again, it's like a different kind of like culture of all these galleries and exhibits and how we talk to each other, like the artist or the community, right? I wish there was. I feel like it's so isolated here in San Diego, at least, right? That you have to do all these jumps through all these loops and do all these things and then know the right people and all that. And then I'm not there yet today. I might one day.
But isn't it true, like pretty much anywhere, San Diego or New York or even Laguna Beach, probably, which is like the art community, you still have to jump through all those loops.
Yeah, you do, but I think that the community, artist community, is a little bit tighter there. You kind of be, at least in Riga, right? All the artists. I know there's the places where we just mingle, we just go, we meet each other. Like again, like you just go to galleries, you just meet people naturally, right? There's this naturality of things versus here, it's just unnatural. You would have to go and like forcibly do it. It just doesn't just happen. It's not a natural environment.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know. And I actually talked to quite a few of, again, my friends here, artists who live here, right, in San Diego, and we find the same thing, that it's just not part of the culture. It's not part of everyday life. Let's say if you look at, well, New York, it's a cliche, or San Francisco, right? You just encounter art. You go and then there's this thing and you just go in there and then you're part of it. Not just you as an artist, but you as a visitor, And I feel like in San Diego, it's not like that. It's not part of everyday life that you go to the gallery. Like, how many galleries do you even have? I'm not talking about the ones that sells like pictures of sunsets and dolphins, but I'm talking like real art. It's not that many.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, I had a little bit different perception of the San Diego art community, but I guess there are more dimensions to it, and it's definitely a different topic, like outside the podcast. I think. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not saying there's none, and then people are ignorant. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying habits, right? It's more about like the city and its habits and how we go about. Like, for example, I go with my daughter, right? If we want to go to, I don't know, really experience the culture, what do you call? We would fly to San Francisco. And it's kind of sad. Like, why can't we just do it here? And we have beautiful theater here and everything, but there is some sort of, and that's actually, it's a beauty of San Diego too, right? Because it is almost like my asteroid. It's like just empty kind of, right?
San Diego is definitely more laid back.
It's laid back and it's kind of, and it's not as trendy. It's not as, you have to do this or that, to exist, but I find it as an artist here, it is very different than if I would do my art, let's say in Riga, it would be very different experiences and how you would go about talking about it? How would you go about exhibiting it? How would you go about finding people who you want to exhibit you? It would be very different.
Would you wish San Diego was more of that cultural cluster?
I totally do. And not for me selfishly. I think it's more for the younger kids, for the younger generations, right? It's like, it's already like all about the culture of consumption, right? It's all about how can I consume more, and then how I could make you consume more of anything, art or food or clothes, or, you know, just all about that. And then I think with art, like the real art, what it does, it makes you question all these things and then stop and think, right? And then if it's not part of your life, really, then it becomes like this, almost like, oh, it's for the privileged people or the people who can afford it. And it shouldn't be like that. It should be for everybody. Again, it sounds, you know, very naive, but I really believe in that. And I think it's like our kids need more of that, you know, more of that kind of like, it's almost like permission, you know, to think differently, to become yourself, have your own ideas, to go to those other worlds, you know, that they're not prescribed to you. Like, how do you discover them? And if we don't have it part of our everyday life, and it becomes this privileged thing that you do every once in a while, then it becomes artificial, you know, it doesn't live anymore. It's like going to museum versus going to the gallery, you know, that's the difference.
I definitely find that, and I don't know if that's only San Diego thing or because I talk to artists pretty much everywhere, and I hear sometimes similar stories that as an artist, you're almost forced to make your art a product because you kind of have to make a living, right? Somehow. So then you jump into this entire like never ending loop of marketing and, you know, business stuff. And it kind of takes away from the experiences that you were describing, like slow down, go deep, enjoy yourself, think deeply about what you do, witness the things that happening. That feels like a luxury because not a lot of people can actually afford doing that in the art community.
Correct. And then I think what we are competing with, which is also just silly, right? It's with decorations, right? So art right now up here, at least a lot is just like, well, would it look nice in my room? Okay, let's say even if you get to the point that you need something nice in your room, it's already good, right? You're thinking about your space, which many people don't, right? And I'm not judging them. It's just it's just a cultural environment where we grow up with, right? And then, well, why would I want to spend $300 for this painting? Forget about that. Probably 80% of it was a frame, right? If I could just buy it on I don't know, IKEA, or I could go to, I don't even know where people buy on Instagram. You have these ads of like pretty posters, right? So I think it's that, right? So then how do you, it's almost like the art has to enter this world of decoration, cheap decoration, affordable decoration, right? Be like, oh, no, but like, look at me, I'm pretty too, you know? So there's no space for art in our environments anymore, right? Because it's like, it becomes an object of some sort of like a display, you know, that I could be, well, I have blue sofa and I probably need like a bluish painting or something, right? So because we live in a world where we have to look good, right? And then our space has to look certain way. So it's all this pretend thing, right? And then art can't really live in that. And it's like, yeah, sure, I could start making marketing campaigns and whatever, and convince people that my, let's say, ink paintings are just so, you know, part of the earth, and it would look very something whatever natural in your environment. It's like, can't do it. Because then I'm just fueling the whole insanity that we live in, you know, of that pretend world, you know, where you don't have to think, when you don't, everything is just convenient, you know. Anyway, so that's the problem, and I don't know how to necessarily. I don't think it's actually even needs to be solved. I think we just need to live the way we live, and maybe our children, the way how we raise them, you know, one by one. It's what was the saying? You want to change the world, you start with yourself, right?
Yeah. And I totally understand where you're coming from, and also hearing about how you feel about your past experience with the design and marketing world, advertising. I can't say that I fully agree with you because I have seen different things happening. Like I am not as accomplished as you are, but I have had collectors who would buy something from me because they feel things, and those things are happening with all kinds of artists. And I witnessed that in San Diego as well. There is a population of people who are buying art because they feel something about it, because it means something to them, or because they have enough context, like with things that you do. Like, it's not a blob that matches the color of my couch, but it's a blob that artists created because in the process of exploration of how universe works. And that becomes a statement in its own, and it lives its own life, and it has like a dedicated space, and it becomes like a conversation starter. And like, a lot of people are actually fascinated with what artists are doing. I do agree, though, that largely, and it's probably not only San Diego, it is a consumerist world. But we as artists, we do have our audience.
Oh, no. By the way, I didn't mean to come across as of like everybody's bad and nobody understands
No, I get it. I understand.
I didn't mean it that way. I'm just saying it's hard for me to enter this marketing world where I would have to reach the people and then change their minds on something, right? I guess I like talking to you, right? You get what I'm saying. I don't have to like twist and turn and like think about like how you would get it, right? It's almost like I guess I just want to be with these people, right? Who are interested in that. I don't know how else to, and I think that we'll just find them somehow naturally, right? And then by just being there out there and then doing things, it just somehow doors just open and it happens. I don't know. I'm just letting things happen for right now. And maybe that's I'm still in this PTSD world of my life. I just want to be like, not controlling things as much,
I understand. Totally understand. Well, anyway, we are at the top of the hour. I have to, well, it's not a hard stop, but I still have a baby and a babysitter and duties. I have my new mom duties to go to. But I really, really appreciate you taking time this morning. And I know it's a second attempt, and damn Zoom did not allow us to do it the first time around, but it was extremely fascinating. I enjoyed this hour so much because this is one of the examples. You said that correctly. Everything is on Instagram, everything is on social media. A lot of artists are really striving to make the name for themselves, like beyond galleries, because galleries is not easy to get to, and people are not going there that often. So Instagram became that kind of a, it's a tool, and it's an obsession, and everyone is, chasing the number of followers. Your account has like a little over 100 followers, and it's like a little over a year old, probably.
Well, because I don't tag anything. I don't do
I know, but at the same time, it's like I'm looking at your work on Instagram. I cannot assume anything, and there's no context. And then all of a sudden, I have this an hour-long fascinating conversation with a person who is, oh my goodness, exploring the universe, like on all levels, from the time not being existent on the asteroids to making pigments from everything, and just see what happens. So it's really it is. For me, it is fascinating that not like very meaningful and very interesting things are happening on different levels of like society, or how society is communicating with, or what's becoming more standard way of communicating with one another, which is social media. That's what I mean. So yeah, I'm really grateful for you to take this time and telling your story. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's messy. I'm super messy. I'm a mess, but it's fine. It's like, not everything can be perfect. It's okay.
But I also think this is something that we need as well, because I know so many artists who are trying to crack that code of doing things on Instagram and running the business, etc., and we need those messages sometimes that, well, you need to slow down and pay attention to what you're doing. And that's exactly what I heard from you today.
Yeah, and just kind of be true to yourself, and then And I know that it's a gigantic luxury, to stay there. I do know that. And I appreciate that. And maybe I can say these things because I had to go through hell, right? To be where I am right now, though I could do it. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know what to know about that. I just want to kind of just float in my little space and see where it takes me.
Well, so far, I see that it's taking you very interesting places.
Oh, yeah, I'm not bored. Yes.
So, the last thing I wanted to ask you is some sort of like a piece of wisdom or advice for anyone who's listening. And most of the people who are listening are artists on different levels of their careers. So, just from your perspective, what is more important? What would you tell them to feel good about themselves or keep doing what they're doing?
Oh God, there's so many, right? But one is just like it's just don't care, don't seek approval, of affirmation or any of that. Like don't, that, because if you're gonna follow that road, then you're just gonna do things not because you want to do them, but because it's expected of you. It's a slippery slope. Actually, not even slope. It's like it's dead end. You're gonna lose yourself, and then. We don't live in an asteroid. Our time is so fast and so little really of it, right? That you just kind of have to be yourself, and then do what's true to yourself. Be true to yourself, to your road, to where it takes you. And I know there's tons of recipes and everybody probably has few that they could give, but I'm saying there is no recipe. Make your own and just do what feels right. But to know what feels right, you have to slow down. You can't go fast because it will just take you. The tide will take you places, right? And then might be too late even, again, it's the time is, this gravity of ours is pretty fierce.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for that again. And thank you for being in the art scene of San Diego. Thank you for doing your work. And I will see you next time in the art scene.
I will for sure. Thank you so much. Bye.
It has been another episode of In the Art Scene podcast. If you liked today's conversation, please give us a good review on Apple and go listen to other great stories. Check out our website intheartscene.com or follow us on Instagram at intheartscene for more content. If you are a creative and you want to share your story, shoot us a message from the website or DM us on Instagram. Look forward to seeing you next time in the Art Scene.